a dream vacation in paradise, a secluded island in the middle of the Pacific, and two couples whose paths should have never crossed. What was meant to be an idyllic escape turned into a deadly nightmare, leaving behind a trail of mystery, deception, and a gruesome discovery that would take over a decade to unravel. This is the haunting case of Mac and Muff Graham, the couple whose disappearance led to one of the most infamous murder cases ever investigated by the FBI. The summer of 1974 brought an eerie coincidence. 6 different boats, each with its own story, arrived at the remote and desolate Palmyra Atoll, a tiny, uninhabited island in the middle of the Pacific. A place of raw, untamed beauty, its crystal-clear waters, coconut groves, and coral reefs seemed like the perfect retreat. But it was also an unforgiving wilderness, where survival depended on preparation, skill, and luck. Among the arrivals were Mac and Muff Graham, a wealthy, adventure-loving couple aboard their luxurious yacht, the Seawind. Experienced sailors, they had spent years traveling the world, seeking out untouched corners and hidden paradises. For them, Palmyra was a dream, serene, isolated, and free from the pressures of modern life. They planned to stay for months, exploring the island's reefs, fishing, and soaking in the solitude. But paradise has a dark side. Unbeknownst to the Grahams, another couple had also arrived. Roy Allen Buck Walker and Stephanie Stearns had come with a very different plan. Their boat, a rundown, barely seaworthy vessel named Eola, was a stark contrast to the elegant Seawind. Unlike the well-prepared Grahams, Buck and Stephanie were desperate, struggling, and woefully unprepared for island life. Buck Walker was a convicted felon, an ex-con with a violent past, having served time for forgery and robbery. He was big, rough, and unpredictable, with a temper that made other sailors uneasy. He had dragged Stephanie, an educated but naive young woman, into his scheme to escape society, live off the land, and grow marijuana in the remote safety of Palmyra. But their supplies were dwindling fast, and their survival plan was falling apart. Other sailors noticed the stark contrast between the two couples. Mac and Muff Graham were friendly, kind, and cautious, always willing to help fellow travelers. In contrast, Buck was erratic, manipulative, and growing increasingly desperate. He watched the Grahams with a mix of envy and resentment. Their yacht was everything he wished he had. Their resources, their food, and even their weapons could mean the difference between starvation and survival. The unease between the two couples grew. Mac had misgivings about Buck. He didn't trust him and warned Muff to be cautious. They kept their distance but couldn't ignore the way Buck stared at their boat, the way he watched them fish, and how he casually asked about their supplies. One day, Mac caught Buck lurking near the Seawind and confronted him. Buck laughed it off, claiming he was just admiring the boat. But Mac felt something sinister beneath the surface. Then, the other sailors started leaving. One by one, the boats that had arrived around the same time set sail for other destinations, returning to civilization. By late August, only 2 boats remained, the Seawind and the Eola. Mac and Muff were now alone on the island with a convicted felon, a crumbling plan, and a desperate man with nothing to lose. And then, the unthinkable happened. On the night of August 27, 1974, Mac and Muff Graham vanished without a trace. No distress signals were sent, no radio messages were received, just an abrupt and unsettling silence. For a couple as seasoned and meticulous as the Grahams, this was highly unusual. They had scheduled regular check-ins, always ensuring their loved ones and fellow sailors knew their whereabouts. Their sudden disappearance raised immediate suspicion. Days turned into weeks, and soon the island was deserted, except for Buck Walker and Stephanie Stearns. Other sailors who had once been moored at Palmyra Atoll had already departed, unaware that they were leaving behind the remnants of a crime scene. No bodies were found, no signs of struggle, only eerie emptiness. Then, months later, the mystery deepened. In late 1974, authorities in Hawaii received a startling report. A couple had arrived aboard the Seawind, the very same yacht that belonged to the missing Grahams. But something was wrong. The boat had been repainted, stripped of its original identity, and its name removed. The couple on board? Buck Walker and Stephanie Stearns. When questioned, Buck and Stephanie spun a weak story. Stephanie claimed that the Grahams had abandoned the Seawind and decided to sail away on a smaller dinghy, presumably drowning at sea. But this explanation made no sense. Investigators were immediately skeptical. Mac and Muff were experienced sailors. Why would they suddenly abandon their well-equipped, seaworthy yacht in favor of a much smaller, less reliable boat? And if they had drowned, where were the bodies? A search of the Seawind yielded more troubling clues. Nearly all traces of Mac and Muff had been erased. The yacht's interior had been altered, key equipment was missing, and personal belongings had disappeared. It was clear whoever was aboard had something to hide. Lacking direct evidence of foul play, authorities could only charge Buck Walker with theft of the Seawind. He was convicted and sent to prison for grand theft. Stephanie Stearns, who maintained her innocence, was acquitted of any charges and walked free. For years, the case faded into obscurity, relegated to the realm of speculation and rumors. Without bodies, there was no murder case. The shocking discovery, a gruesome truth. 15 years passed. Then, in 1989, an unexpected and chilling discovery shattered the silence. A new group of sailors exploring Palmyra Atoll stumbled upon something disturbing buried in the sand, a rusted metal container. Out of curiosity, they pried it open, only to recoil in horror. Inside the container were human bones, bound in wire, along with decayed remains that bore undeniable signs of a violent death. Investigators quickly arrived, and forensic testing confirmed what many had long suspected. The remains belonged to Muff Graham, but Mac Graham's body was never found. The discovery turned a cold case into a full-blown murder investigation. This was no accident. It was murder. Investigators now had proof that Muff had been brutally killed, her body bound, disposed of, and left to rot in a metal container on the island. This suggested a deliberate, premeditated crime, likely involving both Buck and Stephanie. But without Mac's body or a witness, there were still many unanswered questions. A case reopened armed with new evidence. Authorities reopened the case, determined to bring justice for the Grahams. Buck Walker, already serving time, now faced charges of murder. And this time, Stephanie Stearns wasn't off the hook either. The trial. Justice after a decade. With the shocking discovery of Muff Graham's remains in 1989, authorities had the breakthrough they needed to reopen the case. Buck Walker, already serving time for stealing the Seawind, now faced murder charges. Prosecutors argued that the evidence painted a gruesome picture. Walker had likely killed Mac first, possibly by shooting him or overpowering him, then turned on Muff, restraining and ultimately disposing of her body in a metal container, which was later buried in the sand of Palmyra Atoll. But the case took another unexpected twist. Stephanie Stearns, who had lived a quiet and uneventful life after the first trial, was also arrested and charged with murder. Over the years, her story had shifted multiple times, raising suspicion. Had she witnessed the killings, helped cover up the crime, or was she just another pawn in Buck's deadly scheme? During the trial, Stephanie adamantly maintained her innocence. She insisted that she had no knowledge of the murders and that Buck had acted alone. The prosecution, however, pointed to inconsistencies in her statements, arguing that she had likely played a role in covering up the crime, if not actively participating. Meanwhile, Buck Walker remained cryptic. He never confessed to the murders, never revealed what had happened on that fateful night, and never disclosed what had become of Mac's body. To the very end, he kept his secrets buried as deeply as the crime itself. After a tense and highly publicized trial, the verdicts were finally delivered. Buck Walker was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison. He would never again taste freedom. Stephanie Stearns managed to evade a murder conviction, as prosecutors couldn't prove she had directly participated in the killings. While she had undeniably benefited from the crime, there wasn't enough hard evidence to convict her. She walked free, leaving behind one of the most haunting mysteries in modern true crime. The aftermath? Unanswered questions, though. Buck Walker was convicted. Many questions remained unanswered. What truly happened on Palmyra that night? Was it a premeditated attack, or did an argument spiral into murder? What happened to Mac Graham's body? His remains were never found, leading to speculation. Was he dumped at sea, burned, buried in a place yet to be discovered? And what was Stephanie's real role? Was she truly innocent, or did she simply get away with murder? Even decades later, the mystery still lingers, and the Pacific Ocean still holds its secrets. One thing is certain: paradise can turn into hell in the blink of an eye, and in the vast, lonely waters of the Pacific, the perfect crime might go unnoticed until the ocean decides to give up its dead. This was the terrifying story of the Palmyra Atoll Murders, a case of greed, deception, and the darkness lurking beneath paradise. A true reminder that even the most beautiful places on Earth can hide the most horrifying crimes. If you enjoyed this tale, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Crime Tales. We'll be bringing you more shocking true crime stories from across history. Until next time, stay safe and watch your back.